now is Tennessee Senator Bill Hagerty. He's a member of the Senate Banking, Foreign Relations, and Appropriations Committees. Senator, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Great to be with you, Maria. Thank you.
I want to get your take on President Trump and these 4 indictments and, of course, President Biden and his policy. But first, let me ask you about the issue we were just discussing. You're in the Foreign Affairs Committee. What is your thought about the restaurant in Beijing serving hallucinogenic mushrooms to our Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen during a CCP dinner?
Maria, I was absolutely shocked when I heard you report this. It's amazing that we continue to allow China to play us in the way that they are. The CCP has no respect, obviously, for this administration, no respect for this president, nor for his cabinet members. And this is, again, another example of the CCP taking advantage of us, and our response to it is completely lacking.
There's absolutely no response to it. In fact, Janet Yellen, a sitting Treasury Secretary who is, who told us that inflation was transitory. We know that the CCP is trying to replace the U.S. dollar as the #1 currency, and they take her to dinner and they order her a drugged up mushroom dish. She goes on CNN and she laughs about it. Oh, it was really delicious, she told the anchor there.
No, it is absolutely shocking that this administration continues to allow the CCP to take advantage of us in every respect. The spy balloon hacking our Commerce Secretary's email, and frankly, the State Department, I'm sure, has been compromised as well. Everything that they're doing with respect to the United States is showing disrespect. It's violating our sovereignty as a nation, and then we allow this to happen. I'm just shocked that we have not had a stronger response.
I mean, can you imagine if her counterpart came to America and we served him drugs in mushrooms? I mean, can you imagine if the U.S. sent a spy balloon into China, how fast that would have been shot down? I mean, just consider the differences in terms of responses. What does Beijing have on Joe Biden with this soft response to China?
Maria, the President Trump has been making this point very recently. There has every bit of evidence points to some sort of compromise here with the Biden administration and with the president himself. We've seen the evidence of President Biden's family being involved with China, massive payments coming from China. This is deeply, deeply concerning. And when China lacks respect, when China openly shows disrespect to America, I think it makes it even more painful to all of us watching this to see this slow motion train wreck happening and America's position in the world being compromised as well.
It's a very disturbing moment in time. And in the middle of all of these questions about a sitting president who is compromised after taking millions of dollars from foreigners, according to the House Oversight Committee, the foreperson of the Georgia grand jury went on a media tour earlier this year, strongly hinting that former President Trump would be indicted, as he was. Watch this.
Did the grand jury recommend an indictment of former President Trump?
I'm not going to speak on exact indictments.
So nothing that would surprise people who have been following this?
Probably not. I kind of wanted to subpoena the former president because I got to swear everybody in. And so I thought it'd be really cool to get 60 seconds with President Trump of me looking at him and being like, do you solemnly swear? And me getting to swear him in. I kind of just thought that would be an awesome moment. I will be sad if nothing happens. Like that's about my only request there is for something to happen.
Senator, I mean, what is this country becoming?
What we're seeing on display here, Maria, is a two-tiered system of justice where if you are acting in any way that's contrary to the party in power, you're going to be prosecuted. And you have these very unserious people put in positions of, incredible power where they can influence the outcome of elections. And this is what we're watching happening, again, unfolded in front of Americans' eyes right now. What's happening in Georgia is a travesty. What's happening with President Trump across the nation is a travesty right now, where you have Joe Biden incredibly compromised. And the closer that Congress gets to uncovering what's happened with the Biden family, the more effort is being put into prosecuting President Trump.
And, Georgia's putting the RICO charge, racketeering charges against President Trump. Former Georgia gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams refused to concede to Governor Brian Kemp back in 2019. She said it was a stolen election. She repeatedly claimed that the election was stolen from her. Watch this.
This is not a speech of concession.
It was not a free and fair election. The machinery had broken. Thousands of Georgians had their voices stolen.
If it looks like it's rigged, it probably is. I didn't lose. I got the votes. We won't know exactly how many because of how they cheated.
I do have one very affirmative statement to make. We won.
How is this different than what President Trump said, Senator?
Maria, you make an incredibly compelling point. And I listened to the entirety of the conversation between President Trump and Raffensperger. It's on tape. Anybody can listen to it. It'll take the better part of an hour to do it. But what you see is President Trump talking with Raffensperger about, a lack of capacity to go in and investigate the many problems that existed. And President Trump was asking Raffensperger not to do anything illegal, but he was making the point that you don't need to investigate every area where there's a problem. You just need to investigate enough areas to demonstrate the fact that he won. Listen to that, and you will see that every one of these charges, I think, is very, very wrongly placed.
So where do you think this is headed? I mean, I don't think anybody knows how all of these trials are going to play out. But I guess if you look at the time span that we're talking about, the election, the presidential election, is in just over a year. You've got the first primary debate next week. Will President Trump be able to be heard in these trials before the election or after? Because don't these trials take time in terms of discovery and doing depositions? His lawyers are going to have to be given the evidence that the other side has. How long does that take?
Indeed, Maria, I think you're pointing to exactly what is happening right now. We have mounting evidence of crimes perpetrated by the Biden family. And as that evidence mounts, we see the DOJ becoming more and more involved, doing things, again, making Weiss special counsel is a complete joke, but that will have the effect of delaying and masking all types of discovery that would take place. At the same time, the DOJ is working in concert with others to bring more and more cases and put more and more pressure on President Trump. So it looks as if we're going to be spending more time focused on courtrooms than we are going to be focused on actual presidential debates going forward. It's a sad day for America when we find ourselves in this situation.
It really is. People are going to get tired of all of the legal attacks real fast because it's like the upcoming election is, who's a bigger crook here? And we're not focusing on the issues that matter. President Biden is marking 1 year today since signing the Inflation Reduction Act into law. A White House celebration is underway. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen wrote an op-ed for the Journal touting how prosperous the year has been. She says the demand for electric cars has spurred a battery belt of new factories in the Midwest and South, Senator. Your thoughts on policy?
Well, the Inflation Reduction Act is something I call the Income Reduction Act from the very outset. Again, they're taking credit for bringing jobs back that were lost during the pandemic. Many of these jobs were lost in blue states that were forced to, people were forced to leave their jobs because of blue state Democrat policies. So they're taking credit for people coming back to work when they should have been back at work much earlier. The massive damage that was done to America, again, through the pandemic with the shutdowns, particularly in blue cities and blue states, and now with the massive inflation that Biden has brought about. Again, remember, he's the one that waged war on the American oil and gas industry from the day he had office. He's the one that's driven inflation to levels that even if inflation were zero for the remainder of his first term, when I hope it'll be his last term, but if inflation remains zero, he will still hold the record of the century for the most inflation any president has created in America. So it is amazing that they are trying to take credit for a disastrous economy that they are solely responsible for.
Senator, what are you expecting when you all come back in September? I know government funding is expiring on September 30th. None of the 12 appropriation bills that fund separate agencies will be finished. So what are you expecting when the government runs out of money?
I think it's going to be a very difficult set of conversations, Maria, and I fully expect that the White House will try to throw, more funding opportunities into the mix as we try to, move things forward. So I think it's going to be a tough set of negotiations over the course of the month of September. We in the Senate have put forward, the 12 appropriations bills. The House is not ready to address that at this point in time. I think it's going to be very challenging. I think you're going to see Ukraine come into the mix. I think you're going to see a lot of problems mount, and I think it's going to be a very contentious month as we move back.
Will the government shut down?
Hard to say at this point, Maria, but I think that's going to be the looming threat, and we're going to have to evaluate the impact of a shutdown. versus the many things that need to move forward, and the fact that the Biden administration is spending in an out-of-control fashion and refusing to be held accountable.
Senator, it's great to have you this morning. Thanks very much. Touching on a lot of topics there, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you, Maria.
All right, Bill Hagerty.